Welcome to the Time Capsule Show, where we tell stories of the 21st century through the eyes of people just like you and me. I'm Joenrhuz.
And I'm Joerenz.
And today we have medical student and business owner of Humble Daily. And you may have also seen him on the Titan Games hosted by The Rock. We have Quinn Rivera. Welcome to the show, Quinn.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me.
Of course, we're so happy to have you too. So you have a really cool resume. I mean, you were on the Titan Games. I remember watching you on that, and you're also in medical school. So can you just tell us more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yeah, man. So my name's Quinn Rivera, born and raised in small town Wyoming. I was born in Cody, Wyoming. Most people know of Yellowstone National Park. Wyoming's kind of a big square, and then Yellowstone's kind of in the northwest corner, and Cody's the east gate of Yellowstone. So it's God's country for sure. Super beautiful spot, fun place to grow up. I grew up small town Wyoming, spent my whole life in Wyoming, went to college there. And then now I'm at the University of Washington for medical school. And so there's a contract program with Wyoming because Wyoming doesn't have a med school in the state. And so you're at a huge disadvantage not being able to apply to an in-state institution. And so basically the state of Wyoming paid the University of Washington to hold 20 seats for Wyoming students. So I'm in one of those 20 seats basically. And so that's kind of how that goes down. And then there's a whole program where if we come back to Wyoming, we can get some of our student loans paid off and stuff. So that's kind of how I ended up at the University of Washington. But yeah, so we have kind of a confusing story because I actually live in Boise, Idaho right now. So I'm at the University of Washington, but I live in Boise, Idaho, and I'm from Wyoming. And so you can kind of do your medical rotations anywhere in the Northwest because the University of Washington partners with all the Northwest states other than Oregon because none of the other states have med school either. So you can do them in Alaska, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, or Washington. And so we chose to do them in Boise. So my wife and I, whose name is Allie, just chose to kind of hunker down here a little bit. We got a little baby on the way here due in July. And so we're trying to mitigate our moving. We moved 9 times last school year. And so we're kind of ready to be done with that moving piece. But anyways, that's kind of the med school story. All the other stuff, man, I feel like my life has kind of just taken off in terms of the different avenues that I've pursued. I've always been someone that wasn't good at being bored. And so just kind of found ways to entertain myself and grow and learn. And it's fortunate that we live in an era where if you don't know or understand something, it's probably because you haven't put the time and effort in to know or understand something. And so just kind of got plugged into my faith is a big piece of my life. And so kind of started Humble Daily with a buddy of mine that I graduated from high school with, and then my 2 brothers. And so that kind of took off and grew and has been a really fun avenue. And then, the whole Titan Games thing was kind of out of the blue during my first year of med school, but that was an awesome experience too. So.
Wow. I feel like your life is so fun. Like when you were in medical school, was everyone talking about it? Like how you're in Titan Games? Did everyone tune in to watch you on there?
Yeah, so it's been like kind of weird because I took the year off of medical school the year that I was on the Titan Games, and I actually took it off because my wife was finishing school down in Texas, and so she was down in Dallas. She's a dietitian, and so you have to do a 1-year internship to sit for your boards exam to be a dietitian, and so she got put in Dallas, and so we had the choice of our first year of marriage could be me in Seattle and her in Dallas, 2,000 miles apart, trying to figure out how to do it, or I could kind of take a leave of absence from med school and then kind of go down and serve her and help her a little bit. So I did that. And then also because of that, had the time to go and film on the Titan Games. So it was a unique situation because then I went out to Seattle after that. And so no one knew me because I was from Wyoming, but went to Seattle. And then one of the professors recognized me. And then in front of like 200 kids asked me if I was the guy that was on the show. And then ever since after that, everyone kind of was asking a lot of questions and really curious about it. But yeah, man, it was cool. I think like the Wyoming group had like a watch party. I know my hometown had like a couple watch parties and different things like that. But yeah, man, it was fun. It was cool to kind of be a medical representative and show like, hey, you can still be fit and you can be in shape and you can care about your health and wellness, despite the fact that you're in medical school and you're working crazy hours.
Right. Yeah, I've heard so many things about medical school, so many hours of studying, like all day, even like past midnight and little sleep. So it's great that you can still get your fitness into it while you're studying.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah, it's chaos. It comes in seasons. There's definitely busier seasons than others. But yeah, it's definitely, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
So how did you get onto the show? Was there some sort of audition process or did they kind of just pick you out from the crowd?
Yeah, so it was different for everyone. So some people, I didn't have like a big social media following or anything before the show, and so I applied. Whereas I know like some of my friends that were my now friends that were on the show, they had really big platforms and stuff, and so they did reach out to a few people. Just because it was the first season of the show, it helps to have people promoting it on their platforms too.
Right.
And so for me, I actually I was watching. They announced it. I think The Rock was on like Jimmy Fallon after the Super Bowl that year or something like that. And so they had announced that they were going to do the Titan games, and I had a couple buddies text me and say like, "Hey, you'd be really good at that. You should give it a shot. Like you have a unique enough life and story that they might pick you." Um, so I got on and looked at the application. Was kind of like, man, I don't have any time. It was a pretty big application. I was like, I don't really have any time to fill this thing out. I'm in my first year of med school, trying to figure out how to even do this.
Right.
So I told myself, I was like, man, any downtime, free time I have, I lived with 4 other dudes and we played a lot of Mario Kart in our spare time. And so, and I said, when they're playing Mario Kart, I'll try to fill out the application. If I get it done, I get it done. I'll turn it in. If I don't, I don't. It's no big deal. And so I think it was due in like April or something. I ended up getting it done, submitted the application. There was like a 2 or 3 minute video you had to do with it that just kind of showed that you could do the things you said you could do. And so went and did that, and then I totally forgot about it. So I submitted it in April. I was in my first year of med school, didn't end until June. And so I was kind of in the thick of med school and getting prepared for my first round of boards and all that stuff. And I'm at coffee with a buddy, and we're sitting down just kind of chatting. And I get a call. I'm in Wyoming. I get a phone call from LA. And I was like, man, I don't know anyone in LA. And so I just sent it to voicemail. And so we finished having coffee, and then we got done. And I was like, oh, man, I wonder what that was. Like, that's weird. That's probably just a sales call, you know, one of those fake insurance scams or something. And then I went and listened to the voicemail, and they're like, hey, this is so-and-so. I'm a producer on the Titan games. We want to talk to you about flying out to LA to run in our combine. And so I called them back, and ended up being like total crazy mix of events to where like, I wrapped med school in June. I drove immediately to a town in Wyoming where I had to do 1 month of rotations in a town. I got done with that. And then the day after I got done with that, I flew to LA. I ran in the Titan Games Combine, which was like a 3-day event. Think like kind of NFL Combine type stuff, like lifting and running, obstacle courses, that kind of thing. And then there was, I think, 100 of us there at the combine, and they whittled the 100 down to like 30 guys and 30 females. And so I went and did that, flew back to Wyoming, and then got married the next weekend.
Wow.
And so, yeah,
Exciting.
so it was run and gunning, but we got it done, got back in time to help set up the wedding and kind of do everything. And then they called me, I think, in August, and they told me that they wanted me, that I got picked from the combine. And so that was when I had to make the decision, like, hey, I was already kind of leaning towards taking the year off, and that was kind of a good catalyst to kind of push me over the edge and do it. So,
Wow, that's amazing. And then another thing that you have going on, you said, was Humble Daily. I actually love the way that you started it up, because we had a pretty similar thing with our podcast. I founded it with like one friend and then brought in my brother with it. And so like you started it with your one friend. And then so what is Humble Daily all about?
yeah, man. So basically how it started, we started back in 2015. Fitness has always been a big part of my life. Faith has always been a bigger part of my life. And so graduated with a buddy. His name's Jared Eiler. He's still to this day one of my best buds. And we had done some projects together. He's always been all things creative. Like he was that guy that like took apart the camera and figured out how it worked and everything. He was like a creative before it was cool to be a creative kind of. And so I remember he was always filming videos and always doing stuff. And like he would ask his girlfriends out by filming them like sick videos and stuff like that. And so he was just really good at the creative side of things. And we had always connected, but we never got to do much together. I'd helped him. I like had acted in a couple of his like scholarship videos and stuff that he did for college. But other than that, I'd always had it on my heart that I really kind of wanted to work with him because he was such a good dude. And so in 2015, I was at the gym one day, just kind of by myself working out, and had the idea of like, I was frustrated, getting more and more frustrated by the fact that pride is becoming this, like, people think pride is a metric of success. Like you have to be arrogant and prideful in order to be successful. And it's just not the truth, right? And we all know people who are down to earth, who are humble, who have made strides in life. But the prideful people are the ones that get all the TV time because they make good entertainment, you know? And so I think it was a push towards that. And so it was a push towards, hey, like, you don't have to be arrogant in order to make strides in your life. Actually, being selfless and seeking to serve other people is actually going to get you way further than self-promotion ever could. And so, and maybe not by all worldly standards, right? Like maybe you'll make more money if you're like a Conor McGregor, you sell a lot of fights because you're crazy and you have the personality and you have all that stuff. But at the end of the day, man, if people see who you are and they see that you're a selfless person who commits their life to service and wants to give and help and serve, I think at the end of your life, you'll look back and be really fulfilled with what you did. And so I think that was kind of what it was born out of. So I texted my buddy Jared and just said, hey, here's my idea. Here's what I think we could do. I don't know how to make it happen. I don't even know how to make a logo on Photoshop, you know? And so he texted me back that night, a couple hours later, sent me a logo. I was like, let's do it, dude. And so we kind of started from there, and we tell everyone, like, we, to this day, still have no idea what we're doing. We're just figuring it out as we go. And it's been cool. It's just been kind of faithful step after faithful step. I feel like God's kind of calling us to be obedient somewhere. We try to take the step there, and it's been cool. The coolest thing's been the relationships that have been born out of it. And so what it is essentially, Humble Daily, is it's a content and clothing company. I'm actually wearing a shirt right now. So we're trying to, what we say, the vision statement of what we do is we try to spark the conversation, right? So faith is a touchy subject. Everything's kind of a touchy subject in our society right now. Yeah. And so faith and religion being one of those. And so we want to help spark the conversation because humility is one of those things that kind of stands out in our culture. And so if we can put a shirt on you that leads to a question, which might lead to a conversation of depth and significance, then maybe we can help impact and change people's lives. And so we like to say, like, our t-shirts don't have any superpowers, but they can open a door for something that can. And so I think that that's kind of the heart behind Humble Daily and what it is. And out of that was birthed content, devotionals that we write and produce, and social media stuff and podcast, all sorts of different things that we've just, it's just kind of been like a one faithful step after the next. And we're just trying to stay faithful and do what we can. And it's been really cool to see how, like, the blessings have come in the form of a lot of relationships with some really cool people who have helped us kind of further what we do. So
I think that's absolutely incredible, because especially today, like, religion seems to get a bad rep with a lot of people, but faith and religion and all of that, there's a lot of good values that can be brought from that and that people can relate and bring into their own lives, even if you're not necessarily a religious person. So I think this is absolutely amazing, and the way that you're going about it is really great.
Absolutely, man. I agree. And I think it's, we're all evangelists for something, right? Like, if you ate a really good taco, you're going to go tell people about it. And so, like, no matter what it is, we're all promoters of something. And so people just get frustrated for some reason when we're promoters of religion. And some of that's because people have been hurt by the church, and some of that's because people have been hurt by quote unquote, I'm a Christian. So by quote unquote Christians who claim to be a Christian but don't know anything of the faith. And so because of the banner and the sticker that they put on themselves of, oh, I'm a Christian, and they go be total jerks to people and, like, you know, ostracize people, and they don't extend love and help. And, like, yeah, there is a place for admonishment, and there's a place for calling people deeper into purpose. But there's also a place for love and kindness. And so I think that trying to walk in that, and it's a delicate balance, and trying to figure out where that lands. But I think it's the journey that we travel every day, trying to figure out how we can walk that line. So
absolutely. So let's say you weren't pursuing a career as a doctor, and what would you be doing? What do you think your other passions would be? Do you think you'd be doing something like Humble Daily still?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I was looking at that question. I was like, man, I don't really know. And the funny thing is, it's because, like, so I'm on my way to being a doctor, but there was never any defining moment in my life where I was like, man, that's what I'm going to be. Like, I'm going to be a doctor. Like, it was just kind of one thing led to another, and you don't exactly stumble and fall into medical school, you know? And so kind of found myself there, and was like, okay, like, I have the gifts and the ability to do this. So let's just keep moving forward and seeing what happens. And one of my favorite quotes in life is that for a leader, there are no magic moments, just a series of moments where you continue to pass the test. And so I think that, like, that's kind of my story with Humble Daily. That's my story with my faith. That's my story with medical school. Even with the Titan games, of, like, man, I'm trying to be faithful in the moment that I'm in, because the current moment I'm in is the curriculum I need to be successful in the future. And so we've all had moments where, like, that full circle moment where it's like, oh, that's what that was 3 years ago. Like, I needed to learn that in order to fully absorb what happened today. And so I think with medical school, it's kind of the same thing. I kind of looked up and was in medical school. Obviously, a lot of hard work was on the back of that. But so trying to figure out, like, what else I want to do is really difficult, because I really just feel like I'm just kind of walking on a path of, like, man, if I feel called to step out of med school and I feel like that's what I need to do and that's where my purpose lies, like I have no problem doing that. And so some things that I love doing, I love speaking. I love investing in people. I love helping people reach their potential. So I'd love to have something like that. I love podcasting. I love just hearing people's stories. I think taking a genuine interest in people is something that is rare nowadays. I think everyone's trying to network their way to the top. And there's a guy named Bob Goff. I don't know if you guys have heard of Bob Goff. He's like the world's most interesting man, but he's a Christian, and he just writes books about experiences in his life and the crazy things that have happened. And a little excerpt for you of like how crazy his life is he got into law school by going and sitting outside of the dean's office every single day because he didn't get accepted and his LSAT was too low, but he just every day would get there like at 4 a.m. and stay there until the dean left, and would just sit there and just say, he would just tell the dean, hey, when you tell me to go get my books, I'll go get them. And finally the dean caved and let him into law school. And now he's like one of the most prolific. He teaches at Pepperdine University, and he's a representative for the whole country of, I think, Uganda. And he teaches witch doctors about love and kindness. And so he has a school for witch doctors. He has all this crazy stuff that he's done in his life on the back of just like trying to take faithful steps and doing those things. So I love the way that I love like stuff that he does. But there's a quote that Bob Goff says, going back to the networking side of networking is just bastardized relationship. And so I think we've taken this word of networking and really all it is we're trying to utilize someone else's resources to get ourselves to the top. And so I think finding people who genuinely care about another person and genuinely care about relationships and like, hey, no, I just genuinely want to know who you are and want to know kind of what makes you tick and why you do, kind of like what you guys do here, right? Like we want to know your story, and that's why we're interviewing you. And it's not because you are The Rock, like you're some super famous guy that's going to get us to the top. It's because you're a normal person who's done some cool things, and we think people can learn from you. And so trying to take the opportunity, that's why I love podcasting. I love speaking. I love going to events and talking with people. Is there's an opportunity to learn from any person that you cross their path, no matter what age, no matter what they've been through. Everyone has different experiences. And so, man, I don't know. Like, I don't know that I'll die doing medicine. I often tell my wife that, like, I don't know that that's how I'll end my life. But I think it's the path I'm on right now. And so I'm going to try to be faithful on that path. And if that path leads to hopefully like speaking engagements and different things that I can do to help and influence people, at the end of the day, like, I care about people. And so anything that I can do to help further and extend love and be a conduit of good things in society for people and help them kind of actualize their goals. And from my beliefs, like, man, I'd love to see people like see the love of Christ and have their life changed by it. And so I think anything that I can do down that road, as doors open up, I'm going to try to step through them. But like I said, right now, I feel like I'm in med school, so I'm trying to be faithful there. And it just so happens that it's a path that takes a lot of bandwidth and time. So I don't have I do have other things going on, but I have to be pretty centrally focused on the medicine route right now. So
absolutely. I mean, I love how you're living in the moment and you're not trying to, say that I'm going to be completely sticking to this route 100%. I feel like many people today, they feel like they get stuck in a certain situation instead of just living in the moment and just trying to figure out things as they go.
Absolutely, man. And I mean, I say it easier than I actually live it, right? Like, it's really difficult to do at times. And so I think that trying to figure that out and figure out, like, there's a quote, the best way to impact your future is to be faithful in the present. And so I think that, like, we try to impact our future by going to the future in our minds. It's like, man, the best way to get there is to be as active as you possibly can in the present and be as focused as you possibly can in the present. And so that's a daily battle for me. That's a daily reminder for me that I have to remind myself of, because I think leaders live in the future. And so, like, a lot of leaders do, you need to be thinking about the future. You need to be thinking about how you can shape things and how you can steer people in directions that will be helpful for them. But at the same time, keeping that present focus of, like, here's where I am. This is the curriculum I'm on right now. These are the things that I need to be learning. But yeah, I appreciate that, because that's an active battle for me, but it is something that I strive towards every day.
Speaking of staying in the present, we're now at the segment of the show that we like to call past, present, and future. So how do you see yourself now, and how does that compare to the person you were 5 years ago?
Good question, man. I have a buddy, close friend of mine, who told me one time, I was really frustrated and kind of struggled with, like, man, I feel like I should be doing more, like, just kind of having one of those days where it's like, man, have I really accomplished anything in my life? Like, is my life been worth it for other people, XYZ. And one of my buddies said, I think if you look back, I think I was 24 at the time, I think. And so he went back 5-6 years and was like, would 18-year-old Quinn think it's pretty sweet what 25-year-old Quinn has done in his life? And it's like, yeah, he would, like, I think that was a pretty healthy dose of like, man, like we're always on to the next thing, but we're never living in the moment. And so I think like how I see myself now, shoot, man, I feel like I'm always a project, like trying to become more of who I feel like I'm called to be, more of a faithful man, more of a leader that's worth following. I actually have been taking a big step back from Instagram this year just because I kind of felt like God was putting on my heart, like everyone's trying to build a following, but who's actually putting the investment in becoming a leader worth following? And so I think I've been trying to focus more on that this year, of like, man, what do I need to focus on to be a guy that is worth people's time? Like if there's going to be a following, if there's going to be people who are attracted to what you're doing, and if you can help them in any way, I think the best thing I can do is truly take a step, look into my life and say like, hey, how do I serve people? How do I love people well? And then what aspects and avenues of my life need to change so that I can be more helpful to others? And so I think I went down the weeds a little bit there. You want to redirect me a little bit?
Yeah, you're doing great. So we talked about how you see yourself 5 years ago, how you see yourself in the present. So how do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Yeah, man, I think, man, so I'll probably be towards the end of residency, which is weird. Like I'll still kind of be in school, which is like sometimes a hard pill to swallow. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be in school forever. But man, so hopefully a doctor, hopefully practicing. One of the reasons I want to be an eye surgeon. And so one of the reasons I want to do that is I've done a lot of overseas work with a good friend of mine. And so the leading cause of preventable blindness worldwide is cataract. And so a cataract is 100% treatable surgery in America. It's the most common surgery that we do. And so everyone develops a cataract. Cataracts are not something that you get because you did something wrong. It's just a product of age. And so in underdeveloped countries, because of their nutrition, because of their sun exposure, because all those things, they sometimes develop them more quickly. And so I'm hoping I'm helping a friend of mine build out a nonprofit. They're doing much of the law side of it. I'm doing more of the social side of it. But I'm helping them build out a nonprofit to go more overseas. He has a lot of experience overseas. And so he's an eye surgeon too. And so last time I went with him, they were there for 4 days and they did over 700 cataract surgeries. And so these are people who totally can't see, like they're totally blind. And so when you're blind in a third world country, the infrastructure is not built for you to be functional, right? So when you go blind in a third world country, you sit in your house all day long, sit in your hut all day long, you sit on the street all day long. You can't do anything, you can't function. And then you get this cyclical cycle where basically grandma goes blind. So one of the kids has to stay home to make sure grandma's okay and getting her food and eating. And then the kid isn't in school anymore. And then you get this cycle of kind of poverty out of that. And so there's statistics that show that over 85% of people, once they get their sight restored, have a job within that year. And so there's also statistics that there's a strong correlation between the percentage of blindness in a country and their national GDP in third world countries. And so one of the things I really want to be doing in the future is being overseas using skills that I'm learning now to help people with that. So that was kind of a big reason why I chose eye surgery, was because a cataract surgery, it takes 10 minutes. It costs a donor $25 to do it overseas. And within 12 hours, they can see again. And so we saw people who hadn't seen in 18 years that had a 10-minute surgery done. And then 12 hours later, we took the patch off them. And then they got up and started dancing. They were reading our shirts. They were doing all that stuff. And so like you totally change their life with a 10-minute surgery. And so in the future, I hope I'm doing some stuff with that. I hope I'm speaking more. I don't know if that avenue will lead, doing some more kind of humanitarian work overseas will lead to some avenues that I can kind of speak from. I hope, man, I'd love for Humble Daily to become something where we can like host conferences and do things with people to really invigorate them and steer them deeper into their faith. I think I'm kind of one of those guys, like sometimes my dreams and hopes and aspirations are a little too big for my shoes. And so trying to kind of navigate and figure out like, hey, how do again, how do I bring myself back to the present, be focused? And that's been something that I've been trying to do actively lately, because it really is easy for me to live in the future. And like, here's what I desire, here's what I want to do, here's how I'm going to get there. And sometimes that can be stress inducing. And so I actually have tried to take a little bit of a step back from thinking about the future so much, and have been trying to be more focused and present for my wife's sake and for my sake. And so, so a few of those are the few of the things that I hope I can walk in, and some avenues, some lanes I can run in the future. But we'll see where my life takes me.
I feel like Humble Daily could absolutely take off, because I remember one brand that I followed like from the very beginning was Dude Perfect, and I remember that like they do a lot of trick shots and all that, but a lot of what they did, they based around their faith. And so just watching them grow over time, and that they still focus on their faith even though they're doing all these different like things with sports now, it's crazy to see.
Yeah, they're solid dudes. I don't know them personally, but I have friends that know them very well. And yeah, everything I hear about them is they're fantastic guys, and it's cool to see what's happened with their brand, because they're pretty internationally known now.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm surprised that you want to go towards the eye surgery route with your medicine, because I was thinking that, hey, maybe he wants to combine his fitness journey with medicine. But I love the inspiration behind why you want to do it. It's so inspiring, and you actually want to change people's lives, because I feel like I've seen so many doctors on social media, and sometimes I feel like they get lost with their whole purpose. It's like, do I really want to help people, or do I want to make a following and just get people seeing me on Instagram? So your story is really inspiring with why you want to go towards that route.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Something I try to focus on is like the method or the metric by which you gain the platform is what you'll have to do to keep it. And so a lot of people are like, I mean, we all know the chick that gained the platform because she took pictures of her butt, right? And so it's like, once you lose it, man, like you're going to lose the platform too. And so like my hope and my desire is that any platform that like the Lord is willing to let me have is based on faithfulness, because then the only thing I have to do to keep it is remain faithful and keep serving people and helping others. And so I agree. Like there's this weird interest in medicine, because there's kind of this veil that a lot of people don't get to see behind. And so like some of these doctor influencers are letting people behind the veil of different things, which is, I think that's their prerogative, I guess. But at the end of the day, yeah, I agree. It seems like a lot of them are more, they're leveraging the fact that they're a doctor to get people to follow them, as opposed to leveraging the fact that they're a doctor to serve other people. And so and there's a ton of people that are doing it well and doing it right. They're just not super loud about it. And so I think that's kind of more what I strive to be. And if people find it, see it, and relate with it and want to follow it, great. But I for a time really focused on building a platform and doing those things, and it felt really empty. And talking to people who have order of magnitude more followers than I do, like saying the exact same things, it's like, yeah, okay, maybe this isn't where my energy is best focused. Maybe I should focus on kind of developing like who I want to be and who I want to become. So
Absolutely. So you've mentioned that your faith, and like your faith is really a core part of who you are. And so like we've talked about a number of things that sort of guide your life, but what would you say are the main guiding principles that you live your life by?
I feel like that changes in seasons. I feel like different seasons have had different kind of principles I've anchored into. I think one of the ones that I kind of touched on earlier actually comes from a Bible verse. It comes from Philippians 2:20. I don't know how familiar you guys are with the Bible, but Paul wrote most of the New Testament. And so the Apostle Paul wrote most of that. And he had a guy named Timothy who he was kind of Timothy's mentor. And Paul was writing to a church, and he basically said in the book of Philippians, he was talking about Timothy, he said, I have no one else like him. So he completely set Timothy apart. He said, I have no one else like him. And then the reason he gave for why he had no one else like him was, he said, I have no one else like him, someone who will take a genuine interest in the welfare of others. And so I think that's been something that God's really been anchoring into my soul for the last year now, is like, man, I need to be, after the Titan games, it seemed like every conversation was about me, right? Like I'd get in conversation with people, somehow that would come up, and then I was talking all the time. And I never want someone to leave a conversation with me feeling like they only know me, like I want to know them. I want to know about their life. I want to know about their story. Everyone has interesting and cool things to know about them, and everyone deserves to feel like they have value, because they do. And so I think that that's an anchoring principle for sure. Kind of my life verse, it's from the book of Matthew. It's Matthew 6:33. It says, but seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you. And so I think that what that means to me basically is like really focusing in on like, okay, like I'm going to seek God, I'm going to seek what he calls me to do with other people, which is the golden rule of like loving others well and treating people how you want to be treated, which is admonishing people where you see fit. And where with people, one of the things I tell my wife often, my wife is a very kind-hearted, soft soul, and we're kind of polar opposites. I'm a lot of truth and she's a lot of love. And so I think that we kind of help pull each other in different directions. But one of the things I tell her often is the most loving thing you can do is call someone deeper into who they say they want to be. And so I think a lot of times, sometimes we say we want to be something and our actions say something totally different. And so one of the most loving things a friend can do is call you deeper into that person that you say you desire to be, because sometimes we get off track and sometimes we get distracted. Sometimes we lose. And so my absolute best friends in my life are my two brothers. Really close with one of my best friends, the guy that married Allie and I, my buddy named Greg, and those three, along with my father, are guys that they know who I desire to be, and they know the traits that I want in my life. And so that's kind of been an anchoring principle too, is letting people in. The Bible says faithful are the wounds of a friend. Like if someone genuinely loves you and they're willing to wound you in a way that calls you deeper into your purpose and deeper into who you are. We all have hopefully a moment in our lives where we were kind of walking down the wrong path or walking down the wrong road, and we had someone just bump us back or give us a wake up call, you know.
I really love everything that you just said. I went to Catholic school, and I remember like when we went over like a lot of the things in our like theology classes. This is everything you're telling me right now reminds me exactly of like the teachings of Jesus. Like he took on the apostles. He found like I forgot what the names. I think it was Andrew or something. He had a brother. They were just fishermen, but then Jesus saw more in them that he could become one of his disciples who would help spread those messages of love that would go on even after Jesus died.
Yep, absolutely, man. That's a perfect analogy of like that's what I think we're called to do, is like, man, like Jesus told Peter he was going to be like the rock, the foundation of the church, like the foundation of the Christian church was going to be Peter. And at the time, like Peter was a total idiot, right? Like if you read the Bible, like he was the guy always speaking out of turn and always jumping to conclusions. And like that's who Peter was when Jesus told him that that's what he would be. And so I think obviously Jesus had more of an advantage to seeing things that we can't see, but at the same time, like we can see gifts in people and we can speak to those gifts and call them deeper into where those gifts might lead. I'm a big proponent. We live in a world that's obsessed with passion. And I think passion, I wrote a blog about this on Humble Daily, but I think passion is a byproduct. Like, I don't think passion is a primary pursuit. I think you find passion when you pursue purpose, right? And so I think the segue and how it's worked out in my life, how it's worked out in a lot of people's life, is you have a mission. So you pursue a mission, and every mission has a purpose. And when you're going after purpose, passion will always be a byproduct of purpose. If you solely go after passion, you see, like, look no further than a lot of the millennial generation, my generation, of like, you jump jobs every 6 months. You can't keep anything because it's like, well, I'm not passionate about this anymore. I'm not passionate about this anymore. Think about how frequently your passions have changed in your life, right? Like if we all just pursued our passion and got what we desired, like we'd all be married to like our 5th grade girlfriend, you know? And it's like, thank God that didn't happen, you know? And so, but if we can pursue things with a mission, we can pursue things with a vision, and with that comes purpose, then you're always going to be passionate about something that you feel like you're living in purpose. Whereas if you're only pursuing passion and then you're trying to find purpose through that passion, sometimes it gets lost in the feedback loop.
Yeah, I mean, look, speaking of your relationships with your brothers, your wife, with your soon-to-be-born child, speaking of things to be grateful for, like, what are you grateful for in your life?
Man, I tell people, so my wife and I, we haven't done the most recent count, but I think we've moved over 20 times in 3 years of marriage. And so we've spent a lot of time in a lot of different communities. One of our goals we have is to build a meet community everywhere we go. And we've done that better in some places than others. And so, man, one of the things I've seen, like, so many people they look at our life and they're like, oh, you get to see so many places and go so many cool spots. And like, we live there and we get to take it all in. And it is cool. Like, that's a huge blessing to be able to see those things. But what we've learned is that, like, man, the people make the place. And so you can pursue the crazy mountain landscape that you want and the views and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, like, if you don't connect with the people there, like, you're not going to like it. Right. Like, and so I'm super grateful for the people in my life, like the relationships. There's nothing that surpasses the relationships that I've built. and just like the quality of people that you can attract and that you can grow with when you do genuinely care about them. And so I think there's nothing I'm more grateful for. I have a great relationship with my parents. They're my heroes. And so just like getting to have that and see on the back end of like, man, this is the best way to live your life, to invest in people, to pursue people relationally, and to love them well. We have friends, like close friends in most everywhere that we've lived. And so it's cool to have friends all over the map that we keep in touch with, that we grow with. And so that's like the number one thing that I think I'm really grateful for, that I've seen play in my life lately, is just authentic relationship and friendship where I can be fully known and fully loved by people in my life. So when I'm struggling and having a hard time and I'm not sure if I want to finish med school, I can call people and be like, man, I'm talking off the ledge, you know? And so I think that would be a huge thing. Obviously, I'm crazy grateful for my wife, who's just like got an unreal servant heart and just an unreal ability to just like die to herself and serve people around her. And one of the realities of med school is that I just don't have as much time as I would like to have to help her out with things and help her out with things around the house. And so she's put a lot of things she desires to do on the back burner to serve me. And so, which is just a really cool thing to see. And I think she's I tell people she's the strongest woman I know, but she doesn't do any of the things that society is trying to tell you have to do to be a strong woman, you know, like, and so she's just amazing in the way that she serves, the way that she invests in people, the way that she takes seriously just her calling to be like, to walk in her gifts, because her gifts are nurturing and loving and caring for people. So crazy grateful for that. Most of my gratitude is centered around people. And so like, I would say pretty much everything. I'm grateful for like the lessons that God's teaching me in this season. We actually had like a pretty hard season the last year, just trying to navigate and figure out like, okay, where are we called to be? Like, what are we called to do? What does this look like? One of the hard parts about, like I told you earlier, not feeling like I had like a real calling to medicine is sometimes you're like, man, is this where I'm supposed to be? You know, there's a lot of work if this is not where I'm supposed to be. And so kind of wrestling with that and fighting through that, but being really grateful for some of the lessons I'm learning and the impurities, I think, for lack of a better term, the things that are being refined out of me to make me more of who I'm called to be. And I think struggle and sorrow are things that really are a refining fire that help kind of bring about the best version of us. And so I am grateful for that. I think I'll be probably more grateful for it when I'm on the other side of it, but try to keep a good perspective of it too. And knowing that like, hey, this is sorrow and suffering can be companions on a life to a very high place. And so I think that trying to embrace those things, and that like, man, one of the things I wrote in my journal the other day was like, if you quit now, who could you encourage? And so I think whenever I want to quit, it's like, man, if you quit, all you can really do to encourage people is talk about what you wish you would have done, you know, like, hey, you should do this because I wish I would have done it and I didn't. And I don't want that to be my story. Like, I want my story to be one of perseverance and one of growth and one of staying, even though I'm not sure like if this is where I'm supposed to be or what I'm supposed to be doing. If this is where I feel like I'm called and this is where I'm supposed to be, and life has pointed me in this direction, then I want to stay and I want to milk the season and learn everything that I can from it.
That's amazing. All right, so now we've come to the question of the show where we get our title from. If you were to leave something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
Man, this is a good question. I saw that and I was like, man, I don't freaking know. That's a what is your guys's? I was curious. Like, what do you guys have an answer?
You know, someone asked me like in a previous interview, and it took me like a while to come up with something, which was so ironic because we're always asking people this. But what I said was I would put my diploma in a time capsule, which is in mathematical physics, and I would put a note on the back saying that I didn't like, pretty much saying that this piece of paper doesn't define who I am, and you know, I was only pressured to do mathematical physics because our parents pressured us to become doctors, and we're not in medical school right now. But it would just be something along the lines of like, do what you want to do with your life and don't let a piece of paper define who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
I'm honestly still struggling with the question. I've had it turned on me several times, and I think in my head is I still don't know what I'm going to put in there, but I keep asking people this question.
Yeah. Well, it feels like such a moment of significance, right? Like, it's like, man, you got 100 years to make like one impact on somebody with something you choose to put in a box. And so I think, man, the thing that came to mind is like my journal. Like, and the reason that came to mind is I feel like so many people feel alone in their struggle. And so I think that like the podcast we started with Humble Daily is called Known. And the reason we called it Known is because we feel so many people feel alone because they're walking through life unknown. Like there's no one in their life who fully knows them. Like that thing that you say you're going to take to the grave, like there's people walking around with that everywhere. And I know hundreds of people who have found so much freedom in being fully known and fully loved by people who weren't looking to wound them, but were looking to help set them free in forgiveness and love and walking in a life that's not burdened by being held down by secrets, right? And so I think a lot of us feel alone in our struggle, but I hope most of us have that moment where we share a struggle with someone and there's kind of this Me Too moment, and it's like, oh wow, like I'm not alone in this. And I tell people a lot, like authenticity begets more authenticity. And so I try to live as authentic of a life as I possibly can and let my story be as open. Any question people are willing to ask, I'm willing to answer. And so if that leads people to live a more authentic life and to feel more known, to feel more free, then great. I hope I can be a conduit or a catalyst for those things in people. And so that was kind of where my brain went, was like, it'd be cool to do a journal, because my journal is like my thoughts, my prayers, my hopes, my dreams, my suffering, my struggles. We call it a journal now. It's really just kind of a diary, right? So like, I think, man, I think it'd be cool to put something like that in. So 100 years down the road, someone could open it and read it and be like, wow, this dude was struggling with significance. This dude was struggling with desires of just wanting comfort in life. This dude was struggling with desires for wealth and money, and he was just like me, like, and look how it ended up. Like he was fine, he was all right. And so I think there's so much power in hearing people's stories, and there's so much power in the similarities. But if we're unwilling to be authentic, and if we're unwilling to be known, we'll just go through life making people try to fall in love with a mask that we're wearing. And so you never feel fully loved, because you're trying to attract people. You're managing an appearance, right? Like you're accessorizing a character essentially. And so I think like, this isn't like Grand Theft Auto. This isn't like some video game where you get to pick your outfit, do your things, and then like just go out into the world. Like you're a real person with real problems and real struggles. And the sooner you can realize, like, man, there is freedom in being known. And obviously I think it looks a lot more like conversations than it looks like Facebook posts. But I think like having those people in your life where you can be fully known and fully loved and walk in that, and they're not looking to get these things from you so they can leverage them against you. They're looking to really set you free. And so I think it would be cool to do that, because that's kind of how I use the Bible. I think the Bible has a lot of stories of people who were just like me, who I was just reading in Ecclesiastes this morning, and it's about a guy named King Solomon. Solomon, by all accounts, every historical account, whether secular or biblical, accounts him as the richest man who's ever lived. They estimate his net worth was somewhere around 2 to 3 trillion. And so I think in Ecclesiastes, it's basically a book written at the end of his life, where he's looking back on everything and realizing that, I mean, like all the materialism, all the things that he had, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. So he had like 1,000 women, a harem of women he could just have sex with, right? Like, so he had more sex, he had more fun, he had more parties, he had more money than anyone you could ever imagine. And he's writing this book at the end of his life and basically saying, like, the famous lines are like, vanity, vanity, it's all vanity. Like, at the end of the day, like, people are what matter. Following the commands of God is what matter. Like, loving and selflessly serving are what matter. And so I think in a lot of ways, like, leaving a journal would be somewhat like leaving that, where people could look back and say, like, hey, I got one lap around this track called life, and I want to make it worth it. And for me, I think serving people, serving God, and walking and loving in a way that impacts and influences people is how I want to run that lap. And so, man, we'll see. I'm 27 years old, and so we're trying to figure out, I'm still figuring it out too, but trying to walk in a depth of wisdom that's beyond my age by seeking wisdom from people who have lived more life than I have. So.
That's awesome. So do you have any final words for our listeners and viewers? I know you left us with a lot of wisdom within this past hour, but do you have any final words?
I don't know, man. I think, like, just kind of what I said, man. Like, seek how you can serve people and take a genuine interest in them. I think we're in a culture where everyone's trying to stand out and everyone's trying to get their platform, get theirs, get their money. Everyone's an expert in everything, and like, I think Simon Sinek has this idea of like, be willing to be the idiot. And so I've really embraced that and have been like, when I go into a room, typically by like worldly metrics, like I check a lot of boxes for like an intelligent, accomplished guy. Like, I'm in medical school. Like, I am like one of the top in my class. I've done all these different things in life. I run a business while I'm in med school, like XYZ, whatever that looks like. You check a lot of boxes, but if you can turn that and be like, man, like, none of that matters. Like, you're all people and you matter. Like, let's take a genuine interest in people. Let's serve other people. Let's be about it and not just be about creating our own platforms that we can stand on. Because like, how many people have gone before us that have stood on platforms and told you like, man, it ain't what you think it is, you know? And there's a quote that the rich are infinitely better off than the poor because they know that wealth won't bring them happiness while the poor die trying. And so I think like, you can apply that to more than money, right? Like, you can apply that to fame. You can apply that to all these different things where people are like, hey, this isn't the source of joy. So there's got to be something else, you know, like there's got to be something else. I tend to believe it. Like, that's what my faith is anchored in. Like, I think we're engines made to run off something that this world can't supply. And so that's an idea that C.S. Lewis first kind of put forward. And so I think for me, man, like, I want to die impacting people. And if a legacy for anything attached to my name lives on, I hope that's that I was selflessly serving people and helping them walk in their gifts. So, man, I would invite people into that. I think it's the best way to live your life. I think it's the most fulfilling way to live your life. And I think it's the way to impact the most people. You're going to impact them way more that way than you will with any thing you ever post on Instagram. So,
Quinn, thank you so much for being a part of our time capsule. And thank you to our viewers for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And make sure to follow Quinn on all of his platforms. So tune in again next week to meet another amazing addition to our time capsule. See you guys next time.